It all began with a whisper at the worst possible moment. My 11-year-old son Ethan tugged at my sleeve as my sister-in-law walked down the aisle. Because of this, he said quietly, showing me a locked phone screen. My name is Rachel Turner. I'm 40, a therapist, and a mother of two. I've always lived by the rules, built a calm life with my husband Daniel, a respected architect, and our children Emily, 15, and Ethan, 11. We were the picture of a perfect family. But things started to unravel the day we received the invitation to Sarah's wedding, Daniel's younger sister. Her groom, Michael Ellison, a powerful tech entrepreneur. As the wedding approached, Daniel's late nights increased, and his behavior shifted. The cracks in our picture-perfect life were about to shatter. The invitation arrived on a crisp October morning. It was sleek ivory cardstock with gold-embossed lettering tucked in a shimmering envelope. When I opened it at the kitchen table, the kids were finishing breakfast, and Daniel was scanning emails on his phone. "Looks like your sister's tying the knot," I said, holding up the invite. Daniel glanced up, his smile too brief. "About time." Michael seemed solid. Emily raised her eyebrows. "Isn't he like loaded? I saw his house online. It's insane." "Yeah, he's in tech," I said. "Investments. Apps. That whole world." Ethan slurped his orange juice. "Are we all going?" "We are," I replied, watching Daniel. "Big family affair." Later that night, after the kids were in bed, I found Daniel, in his study headphones on, working on blueprints. I knocked gently. He took them off and looked up, his eyes tired. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just zoning out. What's up, Sarah's wedding? It's coming fast." He nodded. "Yeah, I've got a few late nights ahead. Big project due the same week." That had become his refrain. Big project, tight deadline, unexpected meeting. I tried not to read into it, but a thread of doubt started tugging at my instincts. Over the next few weeks, wedding plans filled our calendar, bridesmaid fittings for Emily and me, hotel bookings, flower samples, cake tastings. Sarah, bubbly and beautiful, involved me in every step. "You're more like a sister than a sister-in-law," she said one day, hugging me tight. I smiled, but something felt off. A wrong note in a familiar song. Daniel was distant. He forgot appointments, skipped dinner, and never looked me in the eye when I asked where he'd been. I chalked it up to stress, but Ethan noticed. Kids always do. "Dad's always texting someone," he said one evening while we set the table. But when I ask who, he says it's work. "Why is he smiling at work stuff? Sometimes grown-ups get good news," I said, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. The night before the wedding, we stayed at the resort where the ceremony would take place. It was stunning, vine-covered walls, rose gardens, fairy lights strung across the courtyard. Sarah beamed in her bridal suite, surrounded by friends, champagne and laughter. I watched her from the edge of the room, her joy contagious, but also strangely hollow. She caught my eye and smiled. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Just tired." That night, Daniel claimed he had to check on a last-minute detail for a client. He left around 10, suit jacket slung over one shoulder. I didn't stop him. I just watched the door close, a quiet ache blooming in my chest. The morning of the wedding, everything moved fast. Makeup, hairdressing. Emily looked lovely in blush chiffon. I helped pin her hair, brushing a strand from her cheek. "You nervous?" she asked. I laughed softly. "Not my wedding." Ethan seemed off too quiet. He clung to his phone like it was a lifeline. I assumed he was just overwhelmed. Then came the whisper. As Sarah began her walk down the aisle, Ethan tugged my arm. Because of this, he whispered, his face pale. He held up a phone, not his own. It was Sarah's. My stomach turned. "How did you get that?" I asked. He didn't answer, just stared at me with wide, uncertain eyes. In that moment, I knew. The thing I'd been trying not to see was right there, glowing from the screen. I looked at Daniel standing near the altar, hands folded, face calm. But now I saw the way he looked at her, Sarah. The way she avoided my eyes. I didn't know what was on the phone yet, but I knew it would change everything. We were about to fall apart in front of an entire crowd. And there was no stopping it now. The signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them. Daniel started spending more and more time away from home, and when he was there, he was only half present. He'd scroll through his phone with an intensity that shut out the rest of the world, only glancing up when I called his name twice. If I asked who he was talking to, he'd say, "Just work," but his smile always came a second too late. It was Ethan who first voiced what I had buried. One evening while we were setting the dinner table, he glanced toward the front door, where Daniel had just left. "Dad hides his phone when I walk in," he said, almost like he was testing the words. I paused, holding a fork in midair. "What do you mean? I don't know. Like when I come near, he flips it over or walks away real fast, like Emily does when she's texting that boy from her art class." I let out a small laugh, trying to keep it light. "Your dad's probably just working on something private." "Client stuff." But the unease crept in like cold air under a locked door. That night, after the kids were asleep, I watched Daniel from across the room. He sat in his chair, feet up scrolling. When I approached, he clicked his screen off, just like that. "You still working?" I asked. "Trying to catch up," he said, not looking up. "Big deadline, Monday." I stood there for a moment longer, searching his face for any trace of the man I had trusted for over 15 years. He didn't notice, or didn't care. That moment lingered long after I turned off the lights. By the time the wedding weekend came around, I was carrying that unease, like a stone in my chest. At the resort, Daniel was charming, polite, always smiling, but something in his eyes didn't match the performance. He was too relaxed, too comfortable, especially around Sarah. During the rehearsal dinner, I caught him and Sarah laughing together at the bar. Her hand grazed his arm, and for a moment the rest of the room faded. When she noticed me watching, she straightened up too quickly. Daniel walked back over with 2 glasses of champagne. "For us?" I asked. He hesitated. "Oh, yeah. Sorry. I meant to grab water for you." I accepted the glass, but didn't drink it. That night in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling while he slept soundly. Or pretended to. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, Ethan's whisper cracked my world open. Because of this, he'd said, holding up the locked phone. Sarah's phone. Not his. Not Emily's. I pulled him aside from the ceremony. "Where did you get it?" "It was in the bridal suite, on the bench. No one saw me take it. I thought it was Emily's at first." "Why did you think I needed to see it?" His eyes welled. "Because I saw Dad on it last night, in the hallway. He was reading something and smiling. He didn't see me." My heart pounded. "Did you read anything?" "No. It's locked." But it buzzed, and I saw his name, Daniel, on Sarah's phone, buzzing on the day of her wedding. I clutched the phone tight and looked over the guests. My daughter smiling and unaware in her bridesmaid dress. My husband standing at the front with that same calm smile. Sarah walking down the aisle, stunning in white, surrounded by gasps of awe. Everything in me screamed. This was real. Whatever it was real. And I was standing in the middle of a celebration built on rot. My son looked up at me, scared and unsure. Did I do something bad? I shook my head and pulled him close. "No, sweetheart, you did the right thing." But even as I said it, I felt the floor tilt beneath me. We were about to blow a hole through a wedding ceremony, and nothing would ever be the same again. The rehearsal dinner was held on the upper terrace of the resort, under strings of golden lights that swayed gently in the breeze. The view stretched over a valley of vineyards, the kind of romantic setting most people dream of for a wedding. But as I watched Sarah swirl in laughter among her friends, radiant in a cream-colored dress that shimmered in the light, all I could feel was a strange hollowness pressing against my ribs. She looked beautiful, undeniably so. Her eyes sparkled, her smile was wide, and everything about her screamed joy. And yet every time I caught Daniel watching her, it felt like I was witnessing something I wasn't meant to see. He was different that evening. Polite, yes. smiling at all the right moments. But his tension showed in the way he touched his wine glass too often, the way he laughed too quickly, and how he avoided being alone with me for more than a minute at a time. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe all this family interaction just overwhelmed him. But then came the moment I couldn't shake. I had stepped away to take a call from Emily. She'd forgotten her dress shoes and needed them brought to the suite. When I returned, I caught a glimpse of Sarah and Daniel standing near the edge of the terrace just out of earshot. She was leaning in, whispering something, and he smiled, not the brief, distracted one he usually gave me lately, but a real smile. Familiar. Too familiar. When they noticed me, they both straightened, as if they'd been caught. Sarah walked off first, returning to her circle of bridesmaids with a practiced giggle. Daniel met me halfway. "She forgot her shoes," I said, handing him my wine. "Our daughter, the queen of disorganization." He nodded, sipping from my glass without thinking. "I'll grab them after dinner." We stood side by side, watching the sun dip below the hills. I wanted to say something, to ask what was going on, but the words clung to my throat. Instead, I forced a smile. "You okay?" I asked. Daniel glanced at me, then back at the horizon. "Yeah, just tired. It's been a long week." I studied his profile. Sharp jawline, small crease between his brows that used to only show up during tough deadlines. He used to lean into me when he was tired. Now he leaned away. Later during the rehearsal, Sarah was glowing. Michael couldn't stop looking at her, and it was the kind of look that reminded you why people believe in forever. He was clearly in love, head over heels, no doubts. I felt a pang watching them. Daniel stood beside me, rehearsing his role of older brother of the bride. He played it well, saying all the right things, even cracking a joke during his toast. But it was all so careful. Every move seemed weighed and measured, like he was acting out a version of himself. Back in our room, I stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, and found Daniel on the balcony, lit by the glow of his phone screen. He was tapping quickly, smiling down at whatever message he was writing. I didn't say anything at first, just watched. When he finally looked up, he jumped slightly. "Didn't hear you come out." "Who are you texting?" I asked, casually drying my hair. He locked the phone and shrugged. "Ben, one of the contractors. There's a delivery mix-up for Monday." Even as he said it, I felt the air between us shift. "You can't let work wait until after your sister's wedding," he exhaled, then gave me a small nod. "You're right. I'll deal with it tomorrow." We climbed into bed in silence. I laid there, staring at the ceiling while he turned away from me, phone now hidden under his pillow. I reached over, turned off the lamp, and listened to the silence stretching out between us like a canyon. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My instincts, the ones I'd silenced for months, were screaming now. Something was wrong. And by morning, I'd find out just how wrong it really was. The rehearsal ended with applause and laughter as Sarah and Michael took a bow. Guests wandered toward the dinner tables, and the mood turned festive. Waiters passed around sparkling drinks while soft jazz played in the background. It was exactly the kind of evening that should have been perfect, but I couldn't shake the chill in my bones. Daniel sat beside me during dinner, but it felt like he was 1,000 miles away. He answered when spoken to, nodded along with conversations, even laughed at Michael's dad joke about how he once proposed to a waitress by accident in Italy. But his hand didn't touch mine. His knee didn't lean against mine like it used to. I was suddenly so aware of the empty space between us. At one point, Sarah stood to give a small toast. Her glass caught the light as she lifted it high. "To family," she said, her voice bright. "To the people who lift us up, hold us together, and remind us what love is." Everyone clapped. I forced a smile, watching her eyes scan the crowd. They paused briefly on Daniel. Just a second too long. He smiled back, a little too softly. I looked away. My appetite vanished. I picked at my risotto, sipping water while others indulged in wine and laughter. Across the table, Ethan was deep into his second role, chatting with Michael's niece. Emily was scrolling through her phone under the table trying to be discreet. And me, I was trapped in my own head, replaying glances, tones, and things that should have felt harmless but didn't. After dinner, Daniel excused himself, saying he needed to check in with the valet about our luggage. I nodded, but my stomach twisted as I watched him disappear down the stone steps toward the parking area. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Sarah was off talking with her bridesmaids. Michael was in a heated chat with the wedding coordinator about tomorrow's seating chart. I stood and wandered out to the edge of the terrace, needing air, needing something. That's when I saw them, Daniel and Sarah, down by the fountain near the garden path, half hidden by a wall of ivy. I stopped walking. They were close, not touching, but not distant either. He was saying something and she was laughing, quiet, soft, familiar. The kind of laugh you share when you know something no one else does. She reached up and brushed something off his shoulder. His hand caught hers midair briefly. Then he let go. I backed away before they saw me. Back in our room, I paced. Daniel returned 20 minutes later, a bottle of wine in hand, and a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Sorry," he said, setting the bottle down. "Valet had a mix-up. They parked the wrong car." I didn't ask for details, I just nodded and went into the bathroom. I needed space to breathe. When I came out, he was already in bed, shirtless, scrolling his phone again. I lay beside him without a word, facing the wall. A few minutes later, the screen went dark. He slid the phone under his pillow again. "Big day tomorrow," he murmured. "Yeah," I said, barely above a whisper, but my mind was still at the fountain, still watching the way they smiled at each other, still remembering that pause in her toast on family of all words, and Daniel looking like a man split in two. That night, the sheets felt cold, the air too quiet. Daniel slept, or pretended to. I stayed awake until dawn, because deep down I knew something was already broken. The ceremony was held in a sprawling rose garden on the resort grounds, framed by ivory columns and a breathtaking view of the hills. The air was warm, the sky a clear stretch of blue, and everything from the petals lining the aisle to the soft hum of the string quartet felt like a fairy tale coming to life. Sarah looked like a dream. She walked down the path slowly, radiant, in a satin gown that shimmered with each step. Her bouquet blush peonies and white orchids trembled slightly in her grip. Her eyes scanned the crowd, locking briefly with Michael's, and then she smiled. Everyone melted. I stood to her left in my pale pink dress, holding my bouquet, feeling Emily fidget slightly beside me. She looked beautiful. My daughter, tall, composed, her soft curls pinned back with baby's breath. I reached out and squeezed her hand. She smiled up at me, but I couldn't shake the feeling pressing down on my shoulders. Daniel stood across the aisle in a tailored charcoal suit, hands folded in front of him. He looked proud, polished, like the ideal brother of the bride. But something was off. It was in his eyes. They kept drifting not just toward Sarah in admiration, but in a way that felt charged, familiar, possessive. Too long. He caught himself once, looked down quickly, then back at Michael as if trying to redirect his focus. But I saw it, that flicker of something not meant for this moment. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being insecure, overly sensitive. Nerves, I thought. This was a big day. Maybe he was just overwhelmed. The officiant spoke softly, guiding them through their vows. Michael's voice shook slightly as he promised to cherish and honor Sarah through all of life's storms. She wiped a tear from her cheek as she vowed to be his light, his calm, his home. The guests sighed. Some teared up. It was beautiful. It was everything weddings are supposed to be. And yet every few minutes I felt Daniel's gaze shifting again. Sarah wouldn't meet my eyes. I forced myself to keep smiling, holding the pose for pictures, for tradition. Emily leaned over once and whispered, "You okay, Mom?" I nodded too quickly. Just warm. After the kiss, after the cheers and applause, we followed them down the aisle toward the reception lawn. Guests tossed white rose petals, cameras flashed, and music rose. Sarah and Michael were beaming. For a few moments, I let myself believe it was just me, that I had read too much into everything. The reception was set under a canopy of silken lights. Tables shimmered with crystal glasses and ivory tablecloths. We took our seats near the dance floor as waiters moved swiftly between courses. Michael gave a heartfelt speech thanking his late mother, and there wasn't a dry eye at the table. Then came the first dance. They swayed under the lights, perfectly in step, whispering to each other, laughing softly. The kind of intimacy that made you feel lucky just to witness it. The MC's voice rang out. "Now, we invite all the couples to join our bride and groom on the dance floor." Daniel turned to me, hand extended. "May I?" I hesitated for a second, then took it. His hand felt warm, but unfamiliar, like someone I used to know. We danced slowly, the way we used to in our early years, before kids, before stress, before suspicion. "You look beautiful," he said, leaning in. I smiled faintly. "Thanks." "Everything okay?" he asked, as if reading something in my eyes. "Just tired," I said, echoing the line he always gave me. He didn't press, just nodded and pulled me closer. But as the song faded, I watched him glance again across the floor, at Sarah. And in that moment, I knew it wasn't nerves. It was real. The music softened into a slower tempo, and guests began stepping off the dance floor. Daniel and I were still moving our steps robotic, now the illusion wearing thin. His hand was on my back, but his attention wasn't. I knew where it was. Sarah stood just a few feet away, laughing with one of her bridesmaids, holding a glass of champagne. Her eyes flitted toward him, and for 1 second, she looked almost nervous. Then she smiled. The MC's voice rose again. "Let's keep the love flowing. Grooms, grab someone special and show us your moves." Daniel looked at me, then past me. "Mind if I ask Sarah for a spin?" he asked, voice casual, almost rehearsed. I blinked. "What?" He gestured toward her. "Just one dance. It's her big day." A dozen responses flashed through my mind. "No. Are you serious?" What kind of husband asked that? But I said none of them. My body had already gone stiff with disbelief. "Sure," I murmured. He smiled too easily and stepped away, making a direct line for her. Sarah hesitated as he approached, then gave a soft laugh and took his hand. They walked back into the center of the dance floor, where a new song was starting. Unchained Melody. Of all songs, they moved together like they'd done it before. Sarah's hand rested on his shoulder, his on her lower back, guiding her like they were the only two in the room. She looked up at him, eyes soft, and he looked down with the same gentle expression I hadn't seen in years. The kind reserved for intimacy, for secrets. I stood at the edge of the floor, frozen, watching. People around me smiled. A few guests pointed. "That's sweet," someone said behind me. The brother of the bride sharing a moment. If only they knew. Emily returned from the dessert table and stood beside me, a small plate of fruit in her hands. "Why is Dad dancing with Aunt Sarah?" she asked, frowning. I tried to answer, but my throat closed up. Just being friendly. But even Emily saw it. "He's looking at her weird," she said quietly. I watched as Daniel twirled Sarah gently, the hem of her dress spinning like a movie scene. They were too close, too in sync. His hand lingered just a moment too long on her waist when she returned to his arms. And I knew. This wasn't just a dance. It was a memory relived. A ritual performed. My heart dropped. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't insecurity. It was recognition. That closeness didn't come from one night. It came from something else, something longer, deeper hidden. I turned away, feeling the nausea rise. Back at our table, Ethan was sitting stiffly, clutching his soda eyes locked on the dance floor. He wasn't smiling either. He felt it too. The song ended, and guests clapped. Sarah curtsied playfully. Daniel bowed like a performer, and the room applauded, as if they'd just witnessed a charming family moment. But I was already unraveling inside. Daniel returned, wiping his brow like it had been nothing more than a little fun. "She's glowing, huh?" he said, picking up his drink. I stared at him. Yeah, glowing. He didn't notice the bitterness in my voice, or he ignored it. I wasn't sure which was worse. Later, I caught Sarah alone near the bar, sipping water, cheeks flushed. She saw me and stiffened for a fraction of a second. "Big day," I said, keeping my tone light. She nodded. "It's been overwhelming." I stepped closer. That dance was something. Her eyes flickered. "It was just a dance, Rachel." I held her gaze for a beat too long. "Was it?" She didn't answer. I walked away before I said something unforgivable. But deep inside, I knew we had crossed an invisible line. Something I could never unsee. The reception buzzed around us, clinking glasses, laughter, the shuffle of high heels over grass. But at our table, everything had gone quiet. Ethan sat beside me, unusually still, his fingers gripping the edge of his chair, like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "Mom," he said suddenly, tugging at my arm. "We have to go." I blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "What happened?" He didn't answer, just slid a phone across the table toward me. At first I thought it was Emily's. It had the same pink and gold case with little sunflowers she'd bought a month ago. But no, this one had a small silver charm hanging from the corner. A delicate S, Sarah's. My stomach dropped. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice a whisper. "In the bridal suite," he replied quietly. "I was looking for the restroom and saw it sitting on the makeup table. No one was there. I thought it was Emily's, so I picked it up to bring it to her. But then it lit up." He paused, voice shaking. Dad's name was on the screen. A text popped up. It said, "You looked incredible tonight. I'm counting the minutes." I stared at him, breath caught in my throat. "I didn't mean to snoop," he said quickly. "But, I don't know. Something felt wrong." I glanced around the garden. Daniel was across the way laughing with one of Michael's cousins. Sarah was nowhere in sight. I picked up the phone. It was locked. But just as I touched the screen, a notification banner dropped down, another message. "Daniel, wish I could slip away." One more night, like Chicago, my hand trembled. I tapped the banner, and to my surprise, it opened a thread. The screen was still unlocked. The thread with Daniel stretched long. "Sarah. Don't get caught staring again. Your wife's not that clueless." "Daniel, she doesn't see it. She never does." "Sarah. After tonight, we'll figure it out, you and me." Photo attachments were buried between texts. The first few were tame selfies, hotel lounges. Then came one that shattered me. Daniel and Sarah. In a hallway mirror, his arm slung low around her waist, her lips grazing his cheek, his hand in her hair, her fingers slipping under his shirt collar. Moments not meant for public view, moments meant to stay hidden, moments my son had just uncovered. I set the phone down as if it burned. Ethan watched me, eyes glistening. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know what to do. You did the right thing." I said, my voice barely steady. I reached out, pulling him into my arms, holding his small frame against me as I tried to hold myself together. His voice trembled against my shoulder. "I didn't want to ruin the wedding." "You didn't ruin anything, baby. You told the truth." For a long moment we just sat there. The music around us faded into background noise. My vision blurred. This wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal at the deepest level. My husband, my sister-in-law, lying, sneaking, sharing intimate moments while planning a wedding, her wedding, to another man. A wedding I had helped organize. Ethan leaned back, wiping his eyes with the sleeve of his suit jacket. What are you gonna do? I stared down at the phone. The proof. The undeniable gut-wrenching truth. I need to talk to Michael, I said. Ethan's eyes widened. Now, yes, he deserves to know. As I stood, my legs wobbled, like they didn't belong to me anymore. But the fire inside me burned hotter than the shame, the hurt, or the fear. They thought they could hide it, pretend it wasn't happening. But secrets don't stay secrets forever, especially not when they're uncovered by a child who knew love when he saw it and knew when it was missing. Michael was standing near the terrace bar chatting with two older guests, one hand casually resting on a glass of bourbon. He looked relaxed, content, oblivious. As I walked toward him, each step felt heavier than the last. Ethan stayed back at the table watching me with wide, worried eyes. Michael, I said gently, interrupting. He turned, smiling. Rachel. Hey, you okay? I need to speak to you. Privately. His expression shifted instantly, the warmth draining from his face. He nodded, excusing himself from the conversation, and following me down a small path behind the reception area, away from the music and lights. We stopped near a small wooden arbor wrapped in vines and tiny white lanterns. It was quiet there, far enough from the party that the laughter and chatter felt like echoes from another world. What's going on? He asked, brows furrowing. Is Sarah okay? I took a breath and handed him the phone. Whose is this? He asked, puzzled. Sarah's. He looked down. The screen lit up. The most recent message was still there. Daniel. If only we had one more night like Chicago. His face paled. What am I looking at? He asked, though his voice already knew the answer. Just scroll, I said softly. Michael's thumb moved slowly, then faster. The messages, the photos, the flirtation, the plans. Every thread of deceit was right there, documented, undeniable. The air between us grew heavier with each swipe of his finger. No, he whispered. No, this can't be right. I didn't say a word, just watched as the truth rewrote his reality in real time. His hand dropped to his side, the phone dangling loosely from his fingers. He stared into the darkness, his jaw, tight eyes wide with betrayal and disbelief. How long has this been going on? He finally asked, barely audible. I don't know, I replied. But it's not new. They're not just texting. They've been meeting, hotels, hiding things, laughing about it behind our backs. He ran a hand through his hair, staggering back a step, like he'd been punched. She said she loved me, he said, voice cracking. She looked me in the eyes this morning and told me she couldn't wait to be my wife. She said the same to me once, I muttered. He looked at me, then really looked at me for the first time as someone who understood, not just Sarah's sister-in-law, not just a guest at the wedding, but a fellow casualty. They didn't even try to hide it that well, he said almost bitterly. Did they think we were idiots? I shook my head. They thought they were untouchable. Michael gritted his teeth, then looked down at the phone again. This is sick. They did this while we were planning our future. My God, I invited him to my bachelor party. I toasted him. He leaned against the arbor post, his breathing shallow. What the hell do I do with this? You don't owe her silence, I said. Not anymore. He stared into the night for a long moment, then stood upright, clutching the phone like it was evidence in a trial. I'm not letting this slide. Not one damn bit. I didn't try to stop him. I wouldn't have even if I wanted to. We walked back toward the reception together, the hum of conversation growing louder. I saw Daniel near the bar again, laughing at something with his hand on someone's shoulder. Sarah was talking to her maid of honor by the floral arch. Michael's jaw tightened as he passed me the phone. Watch what happens next. And I knew he meant it. The collapse had begun. The music had shifted to something upbeat. Guests were swaying under the string lights, drinks in hand, laughter filling the garden air. No one saw it coming. Not yet. Michael marched toward the tech booth near the DJ table. His steps, hard and fast, shoulders squared. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding so loud, I thought everyone could hear it. Ethan was still at our table, watching everything unfold with wide, anxious eyes. The DJ looked confused as Michael leaned in, gesturing towards something on the phone. I saw a brief flash of hesitation on the DJ's face, followed by a nod. And then the music stopped. Just like that, the party froze. All heads turned. Michael stepped forward, taking the mic with a steady hand. He looked out at the crowd, his voice calm, but the fury in it was unmistakable. "Sorry to interrupt the fun, everyone. I know it's been a beautiful night, almost like something out of a movie. But before we keep dancing, I think there's something you all need to see." Confused murmurs rippled through the guests. People turned to each other, some laughing nervously, thinking it was part of the celebration. Then the screen lit up behind him. At first, a photo appeared. Sarah, leaning into Daniel, his arm around her waist, smiling, intimate. Gasps filled the air. The next slide showed a text message. "Daniel, she doesn't see it. She never does." More photos followed, another from a hotel room mirror. One of them kissing in a parked car. Text after text, each one a dagger. "Sarah, wish you were next to me tonight. You always knew how to make me feel seen. Daniel, tell him you're tired. Sneak away. I need you." The crowd erupted into stunned silence. No one moved. No one even breathed. Michael turned slowly toward Sarah, who stood frozen near the floral arch, a champagne glass trembling in her hand. Her face went white. Absolute shock. Panic. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Then Daniel stepped forward, face twisted in disbelief. "Michael, wait. This isn't what it looks like." Michael held up a hand. "Don't insult me with that line." Sarah tried to walk toward him, her veil catching on the rose trellis. "Please, just listen." "I did listen," he snapped. "I listened to every lie you told me while sneaking around with your sister's husband." A collective gasp. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the brick path. Daniel looked around, eyes darting, trying to salvage control. It was complicated. "You made it complicated," Michael roared. "You destroyed everything, both of you," guests whispered. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. Someone in the back mumbled, "Is this real?" Sarah finally found her voice, shaky and low. "Michael, I never meant to hurt you." Michael stepped back, shoulders rising and falling with every breath. "You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me. On our wedding day." Then he turned to the crowd, gripping the mic like steel. "This wedding is over." The guests fell silent. "I won't start a life built on betrayal. To everyone here, I'm sorry, but I refuse to pretend." He set the mic down gently and walked away straight down the aisle. Alone, head high. The screen behind him faded to black. Daniel looked at me across the garden, as if begging for a reaction. But I said nothing. I just turned my back. Sarah crumpled onto a bench, veil slipping from her hair, mascara streaking her cheeks. The dream she built collapsed in front of an audience. No excuses, no spin. Just truth, raw, ugly, and unstoppable. The reception was no longer a celebration. It had transformed into a stunned, echoing silence. Guests shuffled awkwardly, whispering, casting glances between Sarah's wilted figure and Daniel's frozen stance. The once vibrant garden now felt cold, empty, like someone had snuffed the light out of a dream. Daniel started toward me. His steps were hesitant, his eyes pleading. "Rachel, please," he said softly. "We need to talk. Somewhere private." "No," I said, my voice low but firm. "There's nothing left to say." He reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't," I warned. Emily stood behind me, confused and tense. Ethan clung to her hand, eyes darting between us, trying to make sense of everything unraveling in front of him. "You can't mean that," Daniel said, desperation slipping through his voice. "Rachel, I made a mistake, a horrible one. But you made a choice, I interrupted, again and again. This wasn't one night. This was a pattern, a secret, a second life you shared with my sister. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, shame flickering across his face. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. You didn't just betray me, Daniel. You betrayed our children. You made a fool of me, of Michael, of everyone here. He looked at Ethan, whose small face was pale and unreadable. Buddy. Ethan backed behind Emily. Don't I said again, not here, not now. For their sake, just walk away. Daniel's shoulders sagged. So that's it, I nodded. That's it. He didn't argue. He didn't scream. He just stood there watching as I gathered our things and turned to leave. Maybe he knew there was no salvaging this. Maybe he understood that some betrayals don't get second chances. I took Ethan's hand in one of mine, Emily's in the other. Let's go, I whispered. We walked through the stunned crowd, eyes following us, but no one daring to speak. Sarah was still on the bench, face buried in her hands. Her white dress now looked garish, like a costume she no longer belonged in. As we reached the garden gate, I paused. I turned back just once. Sarah looked up. Our eyes met. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. She saw it all in my face, the hurt, the rage, the deep disappointment that would never quite heal. I didn't hate her, but I would never forgive her, and I would never let her near my children again. We stepped into the cool night air, the gravel crunching beneath our feet as we moved toward the car. The silence in the parking lot was a blessed contrast to the chaos we'd left behind. Emily slid into the back seat beside Ethan, wrapping an arm around him. I sat behind the wheel, gripping it with both hands before I started the engine. Mom, Ethan's voice was small. Yes, sweetheart, I didn't mean to ruin everything. I turned to face him, my voice breaking. You didn't ruin anything. You were brave. You protected the truth. That's more than most adults would have done. He nodded slowly, eyes glossy, but no longer afraid. Emily reached over the console and squeezed my hand. We'll be okay, right? I looked at her, really looked at her, this young woman who had grown up so fast in just a few hours. We'll be more than okay, I said. We're free now. I turned the key. The engine hummed to life. As we drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing back there worth seeing. Only lies. Only wreckage. And we were done living in it. The house felt emptier after Daniel left, but not in the way I expected. There were no more slammed doors, no more hollow apologies muttered on his way out, no more forced dinners where we all pretended. The silence was different now, not sharp but soft, like something was settling. I filed for divorce within the week. He didn't fight it. He didn't ask for custody or even shared weekends, just asked if he could keep his tools from the garage and the watch I gave him on our 10th anniversary. He said he needed time to figure things out, but he never asked how the kids were doing. That, more than the affair, told me everything I needed to know. Sarah vanished. No texts, no calls, no confrontations. She didn't show up at the courthouse. She didn't even try to explain herself. Whether it was shame or just cowardice, I stopped wondering. Whatever existed between us had been reduced to ash. In the early days, everything was paperwork and exhaustion. I cried in the shower. I cried in the car. I cried while folding laundry, realizing I'd never again wash his socks. And then, one day, the tears just stopped. I applied for a position at the local women's shelter, a part-time counselor role. It was the first time I'd used my degree in years. At first, I didn't think I could handle it. The pain, the stories. But what I found there wasn't just heartbreak. It was strength. Raw, stubborn strength from women who had lost everything and still showed up. And I saw myself in them. Ethan struggled. Of course he did. His grades dipped. He started keeping his bedroom door closed. Some nights I'd find him curled up in bed with his tablet, staring at nothing. But little by little he opened back up. We built a routine again, just the three of us. Family dinners, homework at the kitchen table, movie nights with too much popcorn. One evening, after we finished watching The Iron Giant, Ethan leaned his head on my shoulder. "Is Dad going to marry Aunt Sarah?" "I don't know," I said honestly. He was quiet for a long time. "Are you going to marry someone else?" I looked at him, at his sweet, tired eyes that had seen too much too soon. "First," I said softly, "I'm learning how to love myself." He nodded slowly, as if that answer made more sense than anything else he'd heard in months. Emily was my rock through it all. She didn't ask for explanations. She just adjusted. She took over helping Ethan with his science projects. She started cooking dinner once a week, spaghetti on Wednesdays, always with too much garlic bread. And every night she hugged me goodnight a little tighter than before. One evening as I tucked her in, she said, "We're going to be okay, Mom. You don't have to be strong all the time." That nearly broke me. Not in a bad way. In the kind of way that puts you back together. Our new life wasn't glamorous. It wasn't picture perfect. But it was real. The house was quieter. Mornings were simpler. And slowly, joy started to return in small, unexpected ways. Ethan's laugh at a dumb meme. Emily's excitement about a college brochure. The sound of my own voice humming while folding laundry. I stopped checking Daniel's social media. I stopped wondering if Sarah had moved. I stopped needing closure from people who never respected me in the first place. Closure came from within. It came when I stood in front of a room full of women at the shelter, telling them that healing isn't linear, that sometimes the truth destroys you before it frees you. But freedom is still worth it. Because I didn't just survive. I rebuilt, for Ethan, for Emily, and for me, for